Yeah, what's up, everyone? Happy Monday. A lot of fun show ahead of us tonight. Welcome to episode number 161 of Ginger Runner Live. Tonight, our guest,
Where?
you.
Oh.
Fresh off of a hugely successful 50-mile run at Lake Sonoma. We're going to talk all about Lake Sonoma, Kim's experience. We'll kind of cover what happened up in the front because I was witnessing a little bit of that. But I'm actually really excited to kind of find out more about what happened out on the course with your race. I got to film a little bit of it, and we'll be dropping a bit of a video probably tomorrow. But I can't wait to see like how all the pieces came together. Welcome, everyone. Thank you for taking your Monday and joining us with it. Welcome to Ginger Runner Live, episode number 161. We're going to talk about Lake Sonoma. Here we go.
Ginger Runner.
Yes, what is up, everyone? Yeah. Welcome to Ginger Runner Live, episode number 161. Tonight's episode will be fun. It'll be relaxed, low-key.
A little sleep deprived.
Sleep deprived, I think, is a good adjective. We are fresh off of our recent trip up to, I guess, Healdsburg, Northern California, for the Lake Sonoma 50-miler. We're going to kind of recap the race, and Kim ran. We're going to recap all of your experience there. You finished, did a great job.
Spoilers.
Crap.
Leave that for the end of the show.
We don't know what happens.
Oh, no, this is.
What is that? Karate chopping? So we got a lot of fun show. I mean, we got lots of stuff that we can cover tonight, which is going to be fun. But because it's going to be kind of a fun, loopy, more relaxed show, we do these every once in a while when we're coming back from a race and recapping it. And they're always fun, because we usually always involve something.
Well, I'm rolling up my sleeve, so something must be happening.
You're getting ready for business. So tonight, we are going to partake in a limited release Lagunitas beer, because it's Northern California, so we had to bring a Northern California beer. We were going to bring home some Pliny. I don't know. Yeah, you can see the Pliny there, because we were so close to Russian River. We'll talk about why we weren't able to go there, and it's kind of a sad story. But I don't want to spoil anything, so we'll get to that later. But we're very excited about this one. It's a Bavarian-styled Doppelweizen. So let's get this party started.
I'm really sad about the Pliny right now.
Why? There are more important things than beer. There are. Okay, so I'm gonna pour myself a glass because I promised I'd let Kim pour herself however much she wanted, because she wasn't sure how much of it, because it's quite percentage high.
We also have something else we need to do later tonight, and I also just want to make sure I can stay awake for that. That made it sound weird. We're going to a concert.
We haven't been to a concert ever.
And we're old, so if I drink too much beer right now, I may sleep for the concert.
Tonight is our first concert together. We're going to go see Bonobo.
That's not true.
It is. What are the concerts? Oh.
We've been to a few.
Yeah, that was a lie.
Wait, was that you, or was that my other
No,
husband?
it was your other gingered husband. But tonight, I'm really excited because it's a musical artist that I've been following for a long time, Bonobo, and he's in LA for tonight only. So we get to go see that, which would be really, really fun. Okay, we're getting off topic.
Yes.
First, today was a big day in running because it's Monday. Cool. Boston Marathon happened. And Marathon Monday. It's like the biggest day for marathon and road running and everything. So a huge congratulations to all who were in Boston and towed the line. It sounds like it was a pretty brutal day. I mean, when it's warm in Boston, it's hot in Boston because of humidity. Plus, you have so many tens of thousands of people out on that course. That increases the temperature. The roads suck up the heat. Plus, you're not running an early morning marathon.
It starts later in the day, right?
Some people cross the start line at, I think, 10:30, 10:45, 11 a.m. So they're not even finishing until the heat peak moment of the day. Yeah. And there's probably people out there all throughout the afternoon. And it's a tough course. It's not the easiest course either. So major props to all who were in Boston and running and finished. We had some former guests of the show. Just off the top of my head, I know Mike Wardian was also running. Jorge Maravilla, who we haven't had on the show, but we've talked about getting him on the show.
Alex Varner.
Mario Fraioli. Mario Fraioli. I don't know why. Cool. Mario's going to love that. He's going to watch this and go, Well, I guess that is technically how you pronounce my name.
He's not going to watch this.
Yeah, a lot of Patreon supporters and Ginger Runner Live viewers are also there running, which I think is pretty damn awesome. Of course, we have to congratulate Jeffrey Kirui. I get it wrong. And the announcers today that on the stream that I was watching were calling him Mutai. Like, it wasn't even the same person. They were screwing it up big time. Boy. And Edna Kiplagat, who crushed it. Both of them crushed it. And of course, Hesse finished her first marathon in 3rd place with the records are crazy.
The fastest
debut of an American
debut.
Woman. I mean, yeah, there's just so many
minutes, I think.
Yeah. And the first woman to finish the Boston Marathon 50 years ago also came back to run it again and finished in 4 hours and 44 minutes or something like that. Just, it's insane. So a lot happened over on the East Coast today. And of course, major credit to all those who towed the line, all those who finished. Boston's just, it's a dream of ours. Hopefully someday.
You've been there to spectate.
Mm-hmm.
And you were there on the unfortunate year where
the bombing happened. Yeah, 2013.
And it has been one of my top marathons that I want to spectate, because I feel like running it is very out of reach for me at this point, but at least to go spectate, even spectating in New York was a really unique experience.
Right.
And I think that's spectating a big marathon like that is every runner should try and have that experience.
There's nothing more inspiring than seeing that, especially if you're out there for a good portion of the race, because you'll see the leaders go by and you'll just be like, oh my God, I want to run that fast someday, And then you'll see the mid-packers, the back of the packers. With Boston, there's a lot of this, but you'll see soldiers that are running with full rucks and in their outfits and with other soldiers and stuff. People carrying flags, people carrying all sorts of things, people pushing wheelchairs or strollers. There's all sorts of incredibly inspiring stories that are captured with the Boston experience. So just even as a spectator, you don't leave that race uninspired.
Right.
It's incredible. It's a wonderful thing to see. Hopefully someday we get to be a part of it, actually run the race. And hopefully someday, we can get back and even spectate and support people, support viewers who watch this show and we're out there running and stuff like that. So that'd be a lot of fun. Also, we're going to start talking about Lake Sonoma 50 right now. This is a big weekend in ultra running because it was, I believe, the last chance to get golden tickets into Western states. The last chance for elite men and elite women to compete, to vie for the coveted 4 slots into the Western States 100 race. But basically, the top 2 men, top 2 women at Lake Sonoma 50 this last weekend would get those tickets if they so choose. I believe on the men's side specifically, they were able to pass those tickets down the chain. So a huge congratulations to Yu Wang, because she crushed it. Io was
she looks like, I saw her. So Lake Sonoma is an out and back course. I saw her, I think I was at the aid station where I first saw you, which is around mile 18-ish. And she was already coming back and she just looked fresh and happy and strong.
Io, I've never seen such focus.
Yeah.
When she came to the turnaround, that's kind of where I was standing within feet with her crew and stuff. We were all just kind of standing there, and she came in and was super efficient. It was literally bottles down, bottles in, high fives, grabbed some food, and just booked it. She was focused, determined, and Io crushed it. So a huge congratulations to Io. Right behind her was Casey Lichtai, frequent viewer of the show, guest of the show, which is awesome, and Magdalena Boulay, who's also been on this show before. Just 2 incredibly inspiring female athletes. And they had a really unique race because Casey already has a spot to Western States because she won last year. So she has an automatic re-entry into Western States. So for her, it was definitely a race that I guess this was her 4th year running it. It might've been her 5th, but I believe it's her 4th year running it. And she just loves the course. She loves the experience. I got to briefly chat with her at the finish line. She was talking to other people, so I rudely interrupted.
Rude.
But I just wanted to get a brief little interview with her, and she was talking a bit about how it was just great to be back, and she just had a wonderful time. She said it was one of her favorite 50 milers, but her and Magda worked together. So Magda really wanted the Western ticket, and Casey knew that she would help Magda do whatever it took to get that second golden ticket. So they worked together the entire time. They ran the entire 50 miles essentially together. And every time I saw them, they were chatting and talking and having an awesome time. there were smiles and jokes, and it was super playful. And at the turnaround, Casey had a real quick transition, so she just kind of stopped and waited for Magda to join her. You ready, Magda? Yeah, I'm coming. My partner in crime. And they ran off together. It was awesome. It was a really cool, unique thing, and they ended up tying for second place.
And it was also like really fun to be on a course and see people like that out there.
I agree. It was really cool. I can imagine for you running, it was great to see the elites come through, and they were probably very nice to everyone because they probably weren't so focused on gotta win. And it was.
And also another really cool female runner out there was Gunhild.
Gunhild Swanson was there.
And if anybody saw my picture I posted today, she's in the back in the aid station.
Gunhild?
She beat me.
Gunhild was awesome. I got to run 50 feet with Gunhild, and it was the best. And that was not the best. There were many, many more feet that were better. It was awesome, though, because I'm sitting there like, you inspire. I don't know, your husband. Maybe.
I don't know now.
But she was so like talkative and friendly, and every time I saw her, there was no pain face or I'm suffering, I don't want to talk right now. She's just like, oh, I'm having a great day. It's doing, this course is beautiful. I said, man, I want to be Gunhild when I'm older. She's rad. It
was really cool. So I don't know, you guys. My chat room is doing the same thing as it did last week. I can't
scroll back up.
I can only scroll back so far. So, and obviously, I'm trying to also talk to Ethan this week, so I am doing my best to try and pull some questions out of the chat room.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, if you have questions that aren't being asked or that are being missed, just try and ask them again. I'll do my best.
I'm going to do my best to ask as many questions of Kim, of her race experience, or I'm sure inevitably there will be something that pops up during the interview where you guys want to know what happened or what did you do here? Or how did you handle this? So please don't hesitate to ask in the chat. If we don't see it, continue to ask. And of course, in the post show, we tend to go through a lot more questions.
And we have a lot of first-time viewers in the chat room tonight. So hi, guys. Welcome. If you don't know how this works, we do pull live questions from the chat room. Normally, I'm all eyes on the chat room.
Yeah.
Today, I'm doing my best.
I will also be more frequently viewing the chat room because normally I'm talking with the guests. But tonight, as Kim is answering questions, I'll be able to pull out questions and stuff from the chat room. So again, congratulations to EO, to Magda. They're both getting their golden tickets and they're going to Western States. And congratulations to Casey as well for having an incredible race. And her and Magda finished second, tied together. And congratulations on the men's side to Sage Canaday. We were really excited to see Sage pull the win, because this kid, he works his ass off. He deserves it, right? Like he works harder than anybody that I know just to try to win and compete. And it's awesome to see him, Sage Canaday.
And I have to say, I was running in a fairly long chain of people when I saw Sage coming back. I was only at mile 16 and he was already on his way back, but he came running and I could see him running. So of course, all of us pulled over to the side to let him through, and everybody's like, you're doing awesome. Like everybody was cheering on, and he was cheering every single runner on that he ran by.
Yeah.
Like he was like, you're doing awesome. Like have fun out there. Like every single runner. And he still goes and just like crushes it, He
crushed it. He's like the nicest guy ever. And we have Patreon supporters and frequent Ginger Runner Live viewers who were there.
Yes.
And were either running or spectating or kind of a part of the atmosphere. And they also can attest to how nice Sage and Sandy are. All of the elites are. They're always down to have a conversation, whether before or after the race. And that's what's really unique and awesome about our sport is that it doesn't matter what level the athlete's at. They still want to talk about the sport or interact with people. It's really cool and unique.
It's one of the most fun aspects of our sport in particular.
When they don't, it's weird. It's
right.
If you were to approach Sage and be like, hey man, I really, enjoyed your race, or it was cool to follow you, and he would like turn and walk away, which he would never do.
Right.
That would be weird. It would be weird for someone, an elite, to do that. So congratulations to Sage. And in second place, Dakota. I almost said Dakota Fanning. That's not who finished second. It was Dakota Jones. Star? My favorite movie star. It's Dakota Fanning. She's the best. Dakota Jones finished second, and that was a really cool race to follow. There were so many fast dudes out there. I'm trying to see. Yeah, Ryan Bach, Chris Mako, Patrick Smythe, Jared Hazen. some of these guys weren't able to finish. There was some carnage out there because the heat and the conditions and the hills. I mean, these guys are fast marathoners, and no one knew who the hell would be able to pull first or second. So that was what was really cool and unique about the men's race. And it unfolded. It probably took until about mile 20, 25 before things really began to unravel for some of the guys. And the race kind of went one way over the other, and it was really neat to follow. But the rumor is, and I believe this is confirmed, but both Sage and Dakota passed on their golden tickets. So they chose not to take their golden tickets. And Chris, who was third place, I believe already had a top 10 finish from last year. So he already had a ticket. So I believe the golden tickets went to Zach Zwabluski and Jared Burdick. So both fourth and fifth place gents managed to get golden tickets, which is really interesting because the tickets trickle down. And I believe Sage and Dakota are passing on their golden tickets because they are racing in Europe this summer. They've had their sights set on other races, which I think is really cool and unique. And I don't know. I think it's awesome that they still pushed as hard as they could, knowing that even if they got the golden ticket, that wasn't what it was about. It was about winning and competing and training and pushing the body. And
like you said, like I feel like we're always like really rooting for Sage. I feel like what you were saying earlier, like, he works so hard. And it's nice to see. I mean, it's nice to see everybody win, but yeah, it was really cool to see him in the lead when I saw him.
I agree. By the way, this beer is fantastic. Kim, are you ready?
I am. We have Casey in the chat room.
Hey, Casey Lichtai. Welcome back. Casey, I wish we got to chat more at the finish line. I know that you had lots of people that wanted to talk to you, so I didn't want to take too much of your time, but it's always great to see Casey because she's just constantly smiling, positive, even if she's having a rough day, which she did not have on Saturday, at least from what I could tell. It seemed like she had a great day.
Casey looked like she was having a blast.
The entire time.
I was just like, ugh. Casey's like, hi.
But yeah, when I first saw Casey, it was her and Magda. Actually, it was the second time I saw her when I was with you. She beelined right past Kim and I and to Gunhild, because Gunhild was climbing up this big climb, and as soon as Casey saw her from like a 10th of a mile away, she's like, Gunhild, and ran right to her. And I was like, Casey. Gunhild was like so excited to see Casey. They obviously have a very good friendship. Casey, it's good to see you in the chat room. Thanks for joining us tonight. Okay,
I think I did actually make a joke about seeing if I could ask Casey if she could carry me on her back.
Would have been awesome.
I would have finished faster.
That would make a great video. Let's do that, Casey. If you're down, let's get like a baby Bjorn, and we'll put Kim in it, and both you and Kim can tie for like first place, and I'll make a video. That would be great. It'd be pretty awesome. And maybe I could fit in there too. So I also want to improve my ultra sign up score. It'd be pretty crazy. So let's talk about Lake Sonoma 50. We didn't talk much about this race leading up to it for a couple of reasons. One, I've been injured the last couple of weeks. I've talked about it, and I've just haven't really mentioned it much on the show because it wasn't something I was like, I didn't want to be a Debbie Downer or anything like that. It's just something I've been working on. When I was filming Gary Robbins before Barkley, I went on a very short training run with him to film some of his training for Barkley, and I got injured during it. And it's one of those things, even as I told Gary during the run that, hey, something popped, you feel like this, I should not tell Gary that I'm injured because it's Gary Robbins. Like, how do you nut up and you don't say anything about it. But one of my adductors got a bit pulled. And so I've been dealing with just pain in my adductor region for the last month or so. It caused me to not be able to finish chucking at 50K. I was only able to do the flat for 6, which was expected. And then for Lake Sonoma, I opted pretty much last minute just to be like, I'm not going to push it.
Yeah, you saw our chiropractor and you got some work done.
Yeah.
And you kind of were trying to wait till the very last moment, just kind of hoping that you could make it work.
Like, I knew I could just rough it and get it done. It's one of those, you can suffer through 50 mile purely relying on base mileage from the last 3 years of training. You can gut it out. But a part of me was like, if you gut it out, what's that going to do for the rest of your training in the next 2 months, other races? EO's here. Nice.
Yeah,
EO's in the chat room
as well.
That's awesome. EO, congratulations to you. Hell of a race.
I just want to be like, I'm not worthy.
Yeah, none of us are worthy of EO. So thank you for being in the chat room tonight. We got to get EO on the show.
Yes.
Because she's someone that we've been wanting to talk to for a long time. And this race on Saturday was a great impetus to be like, she needs to be on the show like pronto.
Yeah.
So anyways, dealing with the adductor issue, I decided last minute, it's better safe than sorry. You know what? I'm much happier being there as a support system. And I'm going to be totally honest. It was pretty fun being a spectator and crew and just to like chill on the sidelines. I do not regret my decision at all in hindsight because that course is brutal. It is brutal. We hadn't seen it. We've only heard about it. So when we first saw it on Friday, we drove up to do some photos and stuff along the lake edge. Our jaws dropped. It is incredibly gorgeous. It is like a fairyland up there, and those trails are smooth, buttery single track, but they're relentless. It's hill after hill after hill. Alex Varner, I believe, puts it death by 1,000 paper cuts because every hill
sounds accurate.
There's no rhythm. You can't run for long stretches of time. You're either power hiking or like grinding up or running down, quad buster, all that sort of thing. So I was pretty thankful that I was not starting because I don't think my adductor would have survived it. It just would have been a terrible day. And I'd rather save the terrible days for a race that I'm prepared for.
Right. Yeah. I think it would have been different maybe if it was a 50K or something like that. Then you
100%
kind of could have.
Yeah.
It's more tangible to suffer through something of that distance.
I wish there was a Lake Sonoma 50K. I would have been like, oh, that would have been great. You just go around the first part of the lake and then you're done.
Yeah.
Yeah, that would have been great. But there's only the 50 miler. So that was my experience. So I then basically was like, Kim, I'm your support. Whatever you need, you tell me what you need. So for you, what was it like going into your second 50 miler, but your first race with over 10,000 feet of gain? What were you like the weeks leading up to this thing? And again, I want to look at you and talk to you about this, but I am going to look at the chat room and see if questions pop up.
So we also have Jason Coop in the chat room. I'm getting all nervous now.
Jason Coop, who we also saw out there, who was giving you tons of pep support through me. And every time I told Kim, Jason Coop says this, Kim's like, Jason doesn't say that. I was like, yes, he does. She's like, why does he care? I was like, because it's Jason. He cares. Okay.
You make it sound like I was like crying.
Why is it Jason Coop, Casey, and EO? You were not that much of a mess.
No.
Anyways.
So I guess
I'm gonna keep looking at the chat room.
Setting up like kind of the pre-race situation. As you guys know, I didn't really talk about this race either very much coming into it. I've kind of dealt with a lot of race anxieties and being somebody that's usually kind of back of the packer and worrying about time cutoffs and that kind of thing. Sometimes for me, it works best mentally if I keep my races kind of for myself. I know it sounds a little bit selfish, but at the same time, anything that'll help me get to the start line in like the best mental state I can be, that's what I need to do. So leading into this race, I've been working with Alicia Vargo, and training went fairly well. I'd say 90% of it was fairly well. Up until the last few weeks before the race, which is when we were at Barkley, and then leading into the taper. So there was some kind of missed key workouts in those final few important weeks. And even this race in a whole kind of came up on my timeline pretty quickly. So I really could have used an extra few weeks in there to get in some key long runs and some key workouts. So leading into this race, I was a little bit anxious about the fact that I felt like I was not quite ready. And having only done one 50 miler, which was Sun Mountain last year. So that 50 miler was, I would say, like, it's a good first.
Sun Mountain?
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Like, there's not a whole lot of gain.
It just doesn't exist anymore.
And now it doesn't exist anymore. But there's not a lot of gain. The trails are fairly buffed out. And last year when we ran it, the course was short by 4 or 5 miles.
Yeah, it was about, my watch read about 45.8 miles, which is, you get to the finish line and go, I hope my watch is off because that's.
But then we kind of found that like everybody's was coming up quite short. Yeah. So coming into doing the Lake Sonoma 50 miler, I knew that one, it was going to be my first true 50 miler, it'll be my longest distance I'll ever run. 2, it's my first over 10,000 foot day.
Welcome to the 10K gain club.
Which was like intimidating, but also something that was like really exciting to me, but also made me really nervous.
Yeah.
Because I felt like my climbing and my training wasn't like, everything just wasn't quite where I would have liked it to be, And And lastly, I just figured it would probably be my longest day out on an actual course. So
so you had a lot of things to be nervous about, or a lot of things occupying your mind.
Yeah, and I kind of, obviously we live together, and you kind of heard me, and Ealing
separate rooms, separate beds, guys. It's a real marriage.
Emailing back and forth with my coach and some of my friends like Linda Barton and my other friend Elaine. I was kind of like, I don't know. Like, I don't know if I'm ready. I don't know if this is just those pre-race, the usual pre-race anxieties, doubts, that kind of thing. I didn't know if it was like just that, or if it was me actually feeling like this was a rushed race on my timeline. So I had a few days of like, maybe you're not running it. Maybe I don't run it too. Like, do I do this? Do I don't do this? Is it silly for me to kind of put myself in this situation?
The conversation was every day for the 2 weeks leading up to the race as far as which one of us would be running. I mean, I'm injured and Kim's worried, like, is this going to be detrimental? And because neither of us got real key training runs in, because we just like been traveling so much this year. I don't want to put any excuses on anything because there's no place for that, but it's all on us. But regardless, we just didn't have that confidence level of training going into it where you had more than me. And so I could see that.
Right.
But even though that training was in your back pocket, the doubt still will creep in. It doesn't matter if you've, done a bunch of back-to-backs or, 1 or 2 big long runs. You still go, it wasn't enough. It wasn't enough. But then you also have to remember that every time you go into a big event or a big challenging race, you will always feel like it's never enough. Even if you've done more than enough, it's better to, I think Coop even says this, but it's better to show up uninjured and undertrained than overtrained and injured for a race, because then like this adductor issue could have led to another issue or a compensation injury or something. So you went in nervous.
I went in nervous, and something I do have to give a shout out to Linda Barton, because I sent her this big, long, panicked email because I felt like I had probably tired you of like hearing all my,
I deserve
the same things coming out of my mouth, the same anxieties, the same.
Yeah.
So I wrote Linda this long, like, venting email of, all my doubts and everything. And she went through and edited my email and pulled out all the positive things I actually said about my training. And she goes, how about we just like focus on this? You're saying, I've nailed almost all my prescribed workouts. My nutrition is good. I have that figured out. I'm healthy. She's like, just focus on that. Like, let go of everything else.
Yeah. We got some questions from the chat room, so I want to make sure we get to those as we kind of do the live show. So for Kim, this is from Raul. What's up, Raul? Question for Kim. What did you learn at this race about yourself that you didn't at your first 50 miler? And how did your last race help you at Sonoma?
That is a great question. I actually pulled that question also.
Stop pulling questions. I'll start pulling them. You just focus on
what did I learn?
Answering.
I mean, I think coming out of this race, I feel like I definitely have more confidence. I felt like my mental game was much better with this race. So I did a couple things to kind of help that. My coach gave me kind of 3 key points that I needed to focus on for this race. And I broke those 3 key points down into kind of smaller point form. And just having that kind of mantra and that checklist go through my head all day helped keep me in check. So I think that's definitely something that I will take with me in future races. If that makes sense.
Yeah.
So yeah, definitely confidence.
I'm still fangirling that EO and Casey and Jason are watching.
What about me?
You're watching me right now with terribly creepy eyes.
And how did my last race help me at Lake Sonoma? I think just my last race was actually Carkeek, I guess.
Late fall last year.
Yeah. And I did actually think about Carkeek because I was like, I did this running thing for 12 hours before. I think I'll be fine if I'm out here for that duration or longer. So.
Yeah. Good question. This one's from Scout. Kim, you've mentioned that you've recently started running with a coach, Alicia Vargo. Were there aspects of that informed training that you really felt the benefits of during the race, as opposed to training on your own and kind of doing your own thing?
Yeah, I mean, I've been working with Alicia. I started working with Alicia before what race was it last year? Right before Leona Divide last year, in preparation for my first 50 miler last year. So that's when I started working with Alicia. And for me, like, working with a coach isn't for everyone. And I'm not saying everybody should get a coach, but for me personally, it's been like the best thing that's happened to my running. I'm not like going to go out there and win any races anytime soon. But for me, like, the major thing that Alicia's actually helped me with is nutrition. And that's been a total game changer for me, like a total game changer for me.
Yeah, Kim eats a ton, and it's awesome. Like, she'll pack her bag with oatmeals and gummy chews and goo chomps. What are the honey stingers and gels, and you literally have more food in your backpack than you could ever imagine a woman like Kim eating. But she'll come back with just, okay, garbage. Get this garbage out, garbage. I need to refill it. Let's get that. More garbage, more. It's awesome.
But like for me, like, I always thought I was doing it right before, right? When you don't know, you kind of think you're doing whatever is right. But for me, like, increasing my calories by almost double per hour made a huge difference for me. And that's something that's one of the more important things, I guess, I've taken away from having a coach like Alicia is nutrition. And also knowing that you're in good hands. So I always know that Alicia is not going to just let me go into a situation that I'm not that I'm not ready for, or that she doesn't think I can get through.
How did you react when the first few miles of this race are on road, and the road is not flat and it's not downhill, it's actually tough. It's rolling, and it's like you climb and then you drop down to the edge of the lake. So you basically do a bunch of climbing and then you drop a good 1,500 feet or something down to the lake. With those early miles, how did you start feeling about the race? Did it influence any of your mental state? Or were you able, that's our dog snoring, or were you able to continue to focus on aid stations, or did you have a plan ahead of how to handle the hills and that sort of thing?
So as Ethan mentioned before, we did drive out to one spot. Ethan wanted to get like a couple miles in the evening, and I just kind of wanted to, like,
this is Friday night before.
Yeah, I wanted to kind of get out of my head and go look at the trails a little bit. And so we drove the road portion, and I think I told you, I don't want to do this. This is bad.
The words that came out of Kim's mouth were, I have decided not to run tomorrow.
Yeah, I'm like, no.
And you later told me that you had actually thought about faking being sick, or like faking waking up and going, I can't run.
I woke up in the middle of the night before the race, and I was like panicked. And I was like, I'm not going to do this. I can't do this. How do I tell Ethan that I'm not going to do this? I'm going to tell him I'm sick.
Yeah.
And I think, you and I talked about it, and I said,
there's a real important question in the chat room. How long is my 1 mile average? This is his third time asking.
How long is it? It's 1 mile.
Yeah, it's my average 1 mile is 1 mile.
Yes.
Give or take a mile. If you're asking about pace, it's 3 minutes and 10 seconds. That's my average.
That was important.
Sometimes I get like a 1 minute, 30-second mile.
Driving.
Oh, was he asking about running? Because I couldn't tell. Keep going. Sorry. It was a very important question.
So what? Were you basically asking if the hills are psyching me out?
Yes.
So, right. So we're talking about the first road section, and I think I told you that night, the biggest anxiety trigger for me in these races, where they're relatively small compared to like the marathons where there's 10,000 people or whatever, is at the start of the race, knowing that when everybody starts, you're going to turn around and look. I'm going to turn around and look, and there's probably going to be maybe just a few people behind me. And that is like a huge anxiety trigger for me.
Yeah.
And I knew that, this race starts kind of going uphill, and it's like, it's silly for me to be like, I'm going to charge up these hills so I can feel better about myself. Like, that's only going to ruin my race a few miles down the road. Right. And you were filming and running with me. And I think I told you, like, see, there's like nobody behind me, but what can you do? You
were smart about it.
Yeah. And I think you're like, that's how people ruin the races.
As a husband / crew / I guess your moral support out there, the one thing that Kim was worried about most was making cutoffs. They're not strict cutoffs, but they're certainly cutoffs to be aware of. So to get to the turnaround, that's the first cutoff. You had to make it by 1:15 p.m., which works out to 6 hours and 45 minutes.
Yeah.
So that's essentially a 25-mile run in 6:45. But remember that this 25 miles has close to 5,500 feet of elevation gain. So it's a pretty nasty first 25 miles, plus mud, because the whole region's been bombarded with rainstorms and flooding and mudslides and trees down and just crazy storms. So the trail was left in pretty rough condition. That being said, volunteers and stuff helped make this trail as impeccable as possible, but there's still mud, like lots of slippery mud. So you were really worried about making cutoffs. In my mind,
I'm always worried about making cutoffs, unless it's a race like Leona Divide or something where there's a 50K and a 50 mile taking place. And when I was running the 50K, like your cutoffs are so long that you don't really need to think about it. But for races like this and every other ultra that I've run, I've either been chasing cutoffs or almost getting cut off.
Yeah.
This
goes for those of you who maybe have spouses or significant others who run or do ultras who have these similar worries. You're able to kind of, as an outsider, be able to go, they'll be fine. But no matter how many times I told you, you'll be fine. Just focus on keeping the pace even and not stressing. It doesn't quite sink in.
Right.
But it wasn't until I saw you around, it's mile 18.
I think it's like 18-ish.
I think it's 18. Roughly 18. There's a
18.8.
It's one of 3 major climbs. I mean, these are like, I forget what the exact stat is. I think they're close to 15 or 1,800 foot climbs. And they just take you from the lake edge all the way up to like the highest point on these ridges. We're not talking switchbacks, we're talking straight up. So when I first saw Kim there, I knew that she was going to be just fine, because the distance from that point to the turnaround is just about 6.5 miles.
And I was actually trying to play a joke on you.
What was the joke?
I saw you and you didn't see me.
Oh,
and I was going to see if I could run by you.
Yeah. Because it was also a similar time to like other people coming in, and we were meeting a lot of people at the aid station, and Kim started to leave the aid station when I saw her, and I was like, whoa, oh, she's here. Ah! And I started to run with her with the camera and stuff like that. But what was great and reassuring was that your spirits were so high.
Yeah.
You were still worried about making that cutoff, despite me going, you have 3 hours, until cutoff, and you have 6.5 miles. You'll be just fine. When did you start feeling comfortable? Like, when did you start feeling like, okay, I'm going to finish this thing?
I felt, oddly enough, I feel like I felt good all day. I felt happy for, I would say 95% of the day. I actually felt pretty happy, and I felt relatively strong all day as well. With the time cutoff thing kind of in my head, I didn't fully feel comfortable until I got to that halfway mark and left that aid station, because I actually didn't, there's a couple other cutoffs you need to make, and I didn't actually like study those cutoffs, because I figured, well, if I can get to the halfway mark, I should be fine unless something terrible goes wrong. So I think once I left the halfway mark, I could kind of relax a little bit, even though I'm sure you would disagree that I wasn't still obsessing about the time cutoffs, because I
never
kept
stopped
asking you.
Yeah, you never stopped until later, but go ahead. Sorry.
Yeah, so even though I was still kind of obsessing about the time, I also didn't really know about the other time cutoffs. So I think in my head all day it was like, well, if I can make it to the halfway mark, I should be fine, and I can kind of relax into this. And hey, if there's other time cutoffs after that point that I didn't make, in my mind, I was like, at least I'm getting a decent long run in today.
Yeah. I had a great benefit. Lisa and John, the race director, and the crew basically helped put this whole event on, gave me some free rein with my camera to follow Kim as much as I could, obviously with my injury, since I wasn't racing, to be able to follow Kim. So I was able to go a little bit between the aid station and the turnaround point with Kim and document some of the course and some of the talkings between a lot of the back of the packers, which was pretty awesome. And what was absolutely bar none the coolest thing was that every single person, because it is an out and back course, it is a huge out and back course, so you're seeing people the entire time, but every single person, excuse me, said, great job. good job.
Yeah.
Keep it going. Even if they felt like garbage, they would either respond to you saying it or they would initiate. So there was always something, or a high five or a fist bump. And I'm like, this is really cool. Because I've done out and backs on other courses before. And there are times when you'll go hours and talk to 20 people and no one responds back because maybe it's a tough part of the race, or they just want to focus and not really talk to anybody. But for some reason at Lake Sonoma, every single person throughout that entire stretch it was incredibly friendly and awesome.
And that was all,
and volunteers,
and that was all day, you know, like everybody, even in
the lead, like the leaders. That's so wild. That's really cool.
Yeah,
I think that's what helps set this race apart. Just the friendliness and the nature.
And like the volunteers were so like good and so attentive. Is that the right word? Yeah,
I think attentive is good. I got another question here from the chat room. This is from Cameron Harmon. Question was asked quite a while ago, actually. Do you feel like you're on target in your training plan for Cascade?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, I've never trained for a 100-miler before, so I have nothing to compare it to. But I think getting this particular race done. So we talked about like having your whys for races. I can't remember who the guest was that we were talking.
Nicodemus.
Yes, Nicodemus. Side story. I was running behind a guy that looked like Nicodemus from the back, like with the kind of like when Nick had his shaggy hair. And I was also running behind a guy that kind of looked like John Kelly from the back for a while, for like the first few miles. And I was like, this is great. I'm running with like these
Barkley finishers. Yeah.
Anyways, back to the original.
It wasn't them.
It was not them. No, it wasn't them. Talking about Cascade and talking about another why. So for Cascade, you actually have to run technically a qualifier pre-Cascade. So you have to run a trail race of 50 miles or more between, I think, January 1st and July 30th or something like that. So that was another driving point for this race for me. So in regards to your question about, do I feel like I'm like, you know, headed in the right direction with my training for Cascade, getting this race done and finished the way I feel like I finished, I feel like it's a good positive indicator for things that are hopefully going in the right direction.
This should be a huge bonus for you, just mentally, because it's your first 10,000 foot race. I was talking with some people during the race about this, but a lot of people gauge success of, you know, how many 50Ks have you finished, or 50 milers or 100Ks, you know, you talk about the distance and go, wow, that's really cool. You know, you accomplished a 50 miler. That's great. But what I think people also need to take into consideration is like joining that 10,000 foot club. Because if you've done a 50K, 50 miler, or 100K with 10,000 feet of gain or more, I would hope that the 100K would have more than that for this sort of club. It's an honor, because anything over 10,000 feet at that distance it's hard. It's absolutely going to be hard. You start throwing in weather and technical trails and stuff like that, then it's exponentially harder.
Right.
But Squamish 50, which you have not run, you've done the 23K a couple of times. Like the Squamish 50 miler has 10,000. I forget what the exact gain is, but it's over 10,000 feet. And that's one of those, now you've done a race that has more, you know, like you've done a race that has more gain. So that alone should be a huge confidence booster, plus heat, plus mud, plus all these other things that
creek crossings
that just make it more difficult. So that's a huge, I think, mental boost.
Yeah,
for sure.
And the fact that I feel like this is one of the races, even though I definitely felt my under training later on in the day, I felt mentally really good all day.
What was the toughest part? 95% of the time. What was the toughest part for you?
Toughest part. So I did have a section, I can't remember what the mile markers were. So it was between the mile 18 coming back, that aid station where I left you, and the next aid station where I saw you again.
Yeah.
I can't remember. I could look it up, but I can't remember what mile 38 to 40 something.
Oh, there. Okay. So when I last left you, creek crossing to the finish.
No, just before that one. Sorry.
So miles 32 to 38.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So that section, I felt like it was just getting tough. I felt like it was hot, and I kept wanting a creek crossing just so I could cool myself down, because the heat was kind of starting to get to me around that point. So I would say that was one of my harder parts of the day. And actually the last couple miles I was dragging.
When I caught up to Kim on the last few miles, I was able to move out from the finish line to make sure I documented her finish. This is another thing that was pretty neat. I'll get to in a second. But when I first got visual of you, you saw me and you got down to the ground and laid down. I was like, no, you've got 1.9 miles or whatever to the finish. You're like, I'm done. I was like, no. And you stood up and you kept moving. I could tell that you just got drained.
Yeah, it was those last couple miles. And the reason I haven't talked to my coach about this yet. I'm probably going to get in trouble. But so
I don't even know what you're going to say.
From around mile 7.5, which is 7.5 miles left, which is where I last left you at that big creek crossing.
Right.
So after I left the aid station, you told me.
No, that's mile 38. So you had 12 left after that. Because the next aid station was 45, and that was when you had cut off at 7:10 p.m., which you had beat by hours.
Okay, well, it was somewhere in there. So
okay.
I feel like I had maybe 10 to 7 miles left in the race. I was doing really well with my nutrition. I was eating really well. And
oh, yeah. Okay.
I got to a point where all of the food I had up front in my pack was gone. And I did have more food in the back of my pack. But I was at the point where like, I'm almost done. I'm almost at this last aid station. The last aid station was with 4.5 miles left.
Yep.
So I'm like, I'm almost there. I'm just going to kind of let my nutrition go a little. You get to these, I don't know, maybe it's just me and maybe I got lazy, but I got to the point where I didn't want to dig through my pack to grab the rest of my food. So I was like, I'll just let it slide. I'll get food when I get to that last aid station. I'll be fine. So when I rolled into that last aid station, the guys that were there were kind of going, okay, so you guys still have 4.7 miles to go. So you better get out of here. To like keep it at a steady pace. You better get out of here. And like in my mind, even though I did have lots of time, that triggered something of like shit, I got to get out of here. And so I didn't grab any food when my plan going into that aid station was make sure you load up with food or you're going to need to take off your pack and fish out the rest of your food.
Yeah.
They didn't actually have any nutrition other than Coke. And I think that contributed.
Out of laziness. Not wanting to reach back or take your pack off. Come on.
But it's
what did you run 47 miles or something before?
It's those kind of small things that can help kind of ruin things for you.
Yeah, and in hindsight, you can go, well, it obviously didn't ruin your race, but
right.
You can go back and go, that's a mistake I made. Yeah. I need to learn from that lesson.
And, earlier in the race, I did have to have a moment where I did need to, I basically would carry half of what I had in my pack up front, so I had it accessible, and then I would swap out. Like put my garbage in the back, pull my other stuff out. So had this been early in the race, I would have been more diligent of like making sure. But I was in that mindset of like, I'm almost there. Nothing bad can happen now.
Yeah. Off to the races. This is the last bit.
Yeah.
I've made that mistake at the North Face 50 miler. The first time I ran that 50 miler, because you know how many miles you have left. It's not many. And you go, well, right. I know it's downhill to the finish. It's the biggest mistake you can make because you're not done. You still have physical energy to exert for 4 miles or 3 miles. You can't run on fumes.
And I also made the mistake of getting 2 aid stations before the finish. I had a flask just for Coke because that's what was tasting good to me. And I'd realized like half the flask had leaked. The bottom of the flask sprung a leak. And so like all the Coke had leaked out into my pack. And this was another mistake is when I got into that last aid station, I was feeling like mentally rushed. In my mind, before I got there, I was like, throw that flask away, use your other, like I had 2 other flasks with me, like use one of your other ones. And I actually got the guy to fill my damaged flask up with Coke. So most of the Coke had leaked out. So that was another kind of like, I think I mentally kind of checked out a little bit at that point.
Yeah. Ben saying, in hindsight, you carried extra weight to not use it when you needed it. There's a lesson there that everyone carry what you need and only when you carry what you need and use it when needed. I will, in Kim's defense, she basically carried the same thing from the first half that she carried in the second half. So like you had the exact number of calories for the first half and the same for the second. The first half, you emptied your bag. Yeah. So you used everything you carried. The second half, you just happened to be in a dark place where you just didn't finish the calories.
Yeah, everything I had, it should have been used.
Correct.
I got to that lazy point of like, I'm almost there. I'll be fine. I don't need to do that, like do the extra work of. So I wasn't carrying extra anything.
Yeah, we're talking like an oatmeal pack and a couple of gels or something. Yeah. Regardless, when I saw you for the last few miles of the race, you were in great spirits, smiling, and you knew that you were going to finish. The women that were in front and behind you, it was really awesome. No one gave up their position, even though maybe the woman behind you who.
Yeah, so I'm gonna because we're talking about this, and you might remember this moment a little bit clearer than I did. Tony Lafferty in the chat room earlier said, "Great race, Kim. Did you run with my friend Elka from Auburn?"
Oh, yeah. Speaking of Elka.
So this is where she comes into play. So her and I had kind of leapfrogged throughout the day. Really nice lady, and we kind of talked to each other throughout the day. She was in charge of making the reroute.
Yeah,
the reroute. She didn't tell me that until at the very end of the race.
She's like, sorry, that was my reroute.
Maybe talk about that a little bit later. So yeah, final like mile of the race, I was kind of having I was dragging, and there was a girl in front of me, Elka was behind me, and I kind of pulled over and I was getting ready to let her by. And I was like, please just like go ahead. Like I'm moving very slow. And do you remember what she said?
She said, no way. We've been working too hard to this point to deal with that bullshit or whatever
she's like,
she said.
This isn't how we do it.
Yeah.
You get back in front of me. Let's go.
So and it was really
like,
cool.
Yeah, it was one of those like really cool, like
the girl in front of Kim.
Badass woman behind me.
Yeah.
Like she's like, yeah.
I have it on film, I hope. I think the audio might be a little dodgy, but it was a cool moment to see, and it made me realize that there is something special about this race. Casey and Magda kind of running together and having fun, and realizing that sometimes it's about the strategy as opposed to just the straight up competition. And Elka and you and the woman that was in front of you just kind of going, you know what? We worked this entire day. There's no reason for me to like, I need to get that one place up or something,
Yeah.
Hours and hours and hours of being running out there.
Yeah. And yeah, her and I had kind of been leapfrogging for a long time. And I thought that was really special because it just was like,
it was cool.
If it was a
really
road
neat
race, the person would be like, bye.
Yeah, of course. If it was a road race, it'd be like, see you at the finish, even if there's 10 feet left.
And he did thank her at the end, and like
they all hugged each other at the end.
It meant a lot to me that she was like, no, like stop it.
Yeah.
Like get back in line here.
Major shout outs to Elka. That was a really cool thing to witness. Congratulations, Kim.
Thanks.
So Kim, you finished Lake Sonoma 50 miler in just over 13, right?
Hair over 13.
Yeah,
13:02:22. So that wasn't a goal. I didn't.
Your goal was to finish.
Yeah.
But you were also pretty close to your Sun Mountain finish time. I mean, you were within the ballpark of it, which is saying a lot about your training and your ability to push, because that race has not half, but just a little over half as much elevation gain.
Yeah, which is like, it's crazy to think about.
Nowhere near the heat and mud and all that sort of stuff. So it's pretty cool what you did. Kim, congratulations.
Thanks.
I will put out there that if you ever get the opportunity to crew or pace or to volunteer or to witness someone else, maybe a close friend or family member running an event that is putting them in a place of challenge or doubt, do it. And I encourage you to do it, not only to help support them in their endeavor, but also to just get inspiration. Because I left that race completely full of inspiration from every racer that towed the line and finished that thing, because it's an absolute monster of a course. We have lots of viewers that were there, Patreon supporters that were there, that were running and finished, and
there's lots of people in the chat room that were there as well. So
it's really neat, and there's something special about seeing someone you love dearly do it, someone who you know because they've told you 1,000 times that they couldn't do it, that they believe that they couldn't do it, and no matter how many times you tell them, "Oh, you'll be fine, you'll be fine." There's something to just like see them realize that it was fine and they did it. Kim, I'm so proud of you. I think you're I'm married to a superhero. I really am, because I know that you didn't think you could do it. And as someone who constantly deals with doubt and anxiety myself, it's helpful to see someone who didn't think they could do it, because that gives me hope.
Thanks. Yeah. It was a good day. It was a special day. Casey says those are the moments that you will never forget. That's what trail running is all about. And that's true. Like the moments with Elka, and like just things that you're talking about here, and like even just seeing Danuch and Jenny still hanging out at the finish line like 13 hours or something, just like being there and seeing like faces like that. Like that's what the sport is about.
There's a lot of special parts about this sport and special people and moments. And Casey, you're right. There are moments like these in every race, whether you experience them firsthand or you hear about them through the grapevine, or you tell them on Ginger Runner Live, and you try to relay how special it was to the audience. They exist, and they're amazing when you witness them, because they're the ones that you remember more than anything. Most of the memories I have from Cascade Crest, which is my hardest thing to date, were not the course is beautiful, but it was more the interactions and stuff like that with my crew, my wife, my pacers, stuff like that. They're special moments, and I hope you guys get to experience some of them for yourself on your own. We have a number of questions that obviously we weren't able to answer during the show. I realize that tonight is fun because Kim and I just get to talk about it. We didn't get to have Casey or Magda on, or EO or Sage or Dakota, and we kind of did it on purpose. One, because we were traveling, and there was very little time to actually try to organize that sort of thing. But also, there are incredible post and pre-race interviews with all of those athletes over on iRun Far. And we will get them on the show as soon as possible. Like Casey and Magda, I'd love to get you both on the show to talk about your experience. EO, we got to get you on.
Yes.
Dakota, we got to get him on. Sage, of course. Do
you want to talk about why we didn't get that?
That's how I wanted to end the main show. Before we get to that, we are going to explain why we didn't get Pliny, because just because Kim finished didn't mean that her race was over, apparently. Some bad things happened the next day. But before we get to that, I want to remind those of you who are watching live, the new Ginger Runner head wraps are dropping tomorrow morning, 8 a.m. Pacific Standard Time. Those will be available to the public for the first time this year. They've been available to Patreon supporters now for a couple weeks.
Saw a few of them out on the course.
Yes, many have been out there seen in public, which is so cool.
In their natural habitat.
In the natural habitat where they belong. And there's rumors that each of them carries some sort of magic that allows people to get PRs and meet goals and expectations. Kim was wearing one during Lake Sonoma, just putting that out there. So this is a good batch. They will be available to all tomorrow morning at gingerrunnerstore.com. So keep your eyes peeled. Excuse me, that beer is causing a little hiccup. So we'll be dropping those in the morning. As well as the video that we shot from Lake Sonoma, which is both mine and Kim's adventure up and Kim's run and all sorts of fun behind the scenes type of stuff. It'll be Ginger Bits episode number 15 that'll drop hopefully tomorrow, like afternoon, evening, if not Wednesday. But Patreon supporters will get to see that hopefully before everyone else. Speaking of Patreon, if you want to help this show stay weekly and have it happen continually, please consider joining us at patreon.com/thegingerrunner. It's a monthly subscription service for as little as $1. And basically what we're going to do is right after the show, we're going to go start a live stream for Patreon supporters only, which is we're going to answer all the questions that didn't get answered during the main show. Kim's going to talk about all the gear she wore, the pack, all that stuff, nutrition, what she did specifically. And we'll talk about that in the post show. It'll be a brief one tonight just because we do have to turn and burn. But every post show every week will be for Patreon supporters. So it's a great perk. Plus there are other perks at different levels. So consider that if you haven't already, patreon.com/thegingerrunner. That's pretty much it. So Kim, why did we not stop at Pliny? It's totally okay that we didn't.
Why did I ruin your Russian River brewing dreams?
You didn't ruin anything. Because look, we're sipping some delicious beer. Do you want any more?
I'm good.
Okay.
So I feel like I'm the worst post-race, like, partier. I always think I'm going to like celebrate and I'm going to have all this fun and I'm going to see friends and I'm going to do all these things. After the race, I quickly got very cold. And so we kind of had to go like leave the race because I started to feel like not great. We got back to that place we were staying at. I was having trouble taking in any calories at all, any food at all. Like nothing was appealing and I just couldn't eat. That night after the race, I barely slept. And then I woke up the next morning and I was kind of like, not really feeling great. Like kind of feeling a little nauseous. I have a headache. And so we were kind of like, well, let's try and like take advantage of being in wine country. Let's try and go do a wine tasting.
It's still pretty early. It
was very early.
We got very little sleep. We got up early. I think it was like 10 a.m. We're like, well, we've got time before we were thinking we were going to go to the party.
We were going to try and go to the party.
Which is at a winery at noon.
Yeah. And I was kind of trying to rally and pull it together, but I just wasn't feeling right. So we did go to a winery.
Like a warm-up winery.
I didn't do a tasting. Ethan did the tasting, and I just kind of sat there, and the whole time I was kind of going, I'm not feeling great. Like, and so I did eventually have to actually get up and leave and go to the car. And Ethan came back to the car.
There's nothing lonelier than doing a wine tasting solo, especially a wine tasting with like a cheese pairing. And the woman's like trying to describe all these things. And all you're thinking about is, my wife just went to the car. I love that you think that there's graphite in this wine or the flavors or whatever. I'm like, I just want to drink it. Just bring them all at once.
Yeah. So I went to the car because I thought I was going to throw up, is the best way to put it. I had like an instant splitting headache that felt like one of the worst migraines I've ever experienced, like tears rolling down my cheeks. And Ethan came back to the car, and I was kind of like, we need to not be in this parking lot, but we also need to be pulled over on the side of the road somewhere right now. And Ethan's talked about it many times. He does not like being around people that are getting sick.
Well, I don't like getting sick, throwing up.
Right.
I can't. It's one of my fears. It's my fear of heights, my fear of spiders. That's mine. And you yak some pretty good yakking.
And I spent a large chunk of time
probably about an hour.
Beautiful wine country on the side of the road,
right next to just this gorgeous vineyard. Kim's just like looking at the winery and the vineyards and just letting it all out.
So yeah, so I was extremely
really
sick, and we weren't really sure what was going on, and we were debating trying to find like a clinic or a hospital, because I actually haven't felt that ill in, like, I can't remember the last time I felt that sick.
Yeah, it was really, really rough.
Yeah.
And you know, Kim's had this after like San Francisco Marathon. I remember like right after you finished, you got sick, and it's happened at other events, but for some reason this one it took all night and into the next day, over close to 18 hours before it actually kicked in. And when it did, it kicked in.
And it was bad.
It was pretty bad. And so we had to figure out, well, what do we do? Because it's a 9-hour drive home. Yeah. I mean, it's like maybe 7 hours to where we needed to pick up Gus, and then maybe a couple more hours to our home. So like, how do we do this? Do we go to the party at all? Like, do we go to the wine tasting? That was out of the question. So we weren't able to go to the post-race wine tasting with everyone else. So sorry, we missed everybody there. It would not have been fun.
It was my fault.
For us. It was not your fault. We didn't
I'm sweating actually, just like thinking about how sick I felt yesterday.
But we also didn't get to go to Russian River to get the Pliny, which is a bummer, but it's just beer. It's not a big deal. But that's funny that someone was asking about that. But yeah, unfortunately, Kim got sick. Regardless, we got home. Well, no, we actually got halfway home yesterday. Yeah, we got to Santa Barbara, and then we got home today. But you feel much better.
I do. I mean, and all you want to do after you run a big race is like drink beer, drink wine, eat like the crappy food that you've been like dying to eat. And like what my first meal late last night was like plain brown rice with steamed vegetables, because it was like the most bland thing I could find.
Yeah.
I was like, oh, that's not very fun.
Yeah. I was gonna, I don't know if Casey's still in the chat room, but I was curious like what her, because Kim and I, we crave pizza or French fries or something after a long effort like that. I wonder, like, or EO or Jason Coop, like what they crave. I know we've had her on the show, and we probably talked specifically about that, but I forget if she does like hamburgers or if it's something like Subway. Wasn't it Subway?
Subway was a pre-race.
It was pre-race,
I think.
So yeah. Okay, guys, we're gonna wrap up this main show. Thank you so much for tuning in and watching tonight. We're live every Monday here at 6 p.m. Pacific Standard Time. Next week, I think I know who we're gonna have on. I'm not gonna say it, but I think I know.
I don't even know.
Yeah, you don't. But it should be fun. Regardless, thank you guys for watching tonight. And of course, we'll have some new videos this week. I'm going to say plural because I know we're going to have the new Ginger Bits episode, but I think we're going to have something fun also that's going to drop, which might actually drop tomorrow.
And I'm going to be returning to regularly scheduled videos this week as well.
Yeah, because your race is done.
My race is done. Our Barkley travel is done. I can actually focus back and like be a normal human being now. Lots of stuff happening, guys. So consider joining the Patreon site because you'll be the first to hear about all of it and all that good stuff. So we're going to do a post show with you guys for Patreon supporters here in just a couple of seconds after this show ends. And we'll see you there if you are going to do that. Otherwise, we'll see you next week. Yes. Yeah, cool. Thanks, guys. Get out there. Guys. Train hard, race harder, party hardest. You know the drill. And congratulations to all who finished or towed the line at Lake Sonoma. Yes. Boston, or any race this weekend. We love to hear those stories, so feel free to let us know what you managed to accomplish this last weekend. We love to hear about it. And congrats to the winners and the golden ticket winners. And congrats to you, babe. Thanks.
You got it. All right. See you guys later in the post show.
Ginger Runner.